Hi, everyone. Sorry, just turning my phone on silent. Welcome to the Money with Me work session. Today, I am going to go through a September mid-month budget review, and I wanted to share a few tips on how to build financial discipline. So I wanted to share that just because I have a few tips for things that I've done, and then just wanted to talk a little bit about boundaries. So for this session, we'll do the tips on how to build financial discipline. We'll do, I'm thinking, one 10-minute silent work session in order to do the mid-month budget check-in. And then I'll leave time for Q&A at the end if you have questions that you would like me to answer. So getting started into how to build financial discipline. So I started with having kind of one account. I always call it one account to rule them all. So this was a way, I didn't realize it at the time, but this helped me to kind of practice having money and not spending it. And kind of before I get more into that, I did want to mention that I don't think that discipline is necessarily a bad thing. I'm not talking about it referred to punishments. I'm talking more about like the discipline to keep our word to ourselves. If we say this amount of money is for this specific purpose, sticking to that would be the discipline in order to stick to that. And I kind of got this idea from Terry Crews. He talks about how discipline is the path to freedom. So discipline with working out gives you the freedom to have a strong, healthy body, which means that you can have little cheats that don't necessarily throw you way off course. Mandaraj, welcome to the live stream. Thanks for hopping on. So yeah, when I'm talking about discipline, it's not really a bad thing. I'm just talking about our ability to keep our word to ourselves when it comes to our finances. So like I said, the one account to rule them all. So I had, at one point when I realized this, it was like $12,000 in my checking account and $100 in my savings account. And I only had $100 in my savings account because that's the bare minimum I needed to have in order to have the free checking account. And I didn't realize it at the time, like I said, but this really helped me to practice to kind of use that muscle of having money in my account and getting used to not spending it. And this is going to be particularly important for you if you would say things like, if I have more than $1,000 in my account, I'll spend it, which is something that I've heard clients say before. If I have more than $1,000 in my account, I'll spend it. Really, that is a discipline issue when it comes to your money. I think that it can be improved. I don't think that you either have it or you don't. I think it takes practice to continually see more than $1,000 and not spend it to the point where you can say, oh, okay, I have this money. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to spend it. Having money isn't a reason to spend it. That's one of my mantras. We should be buying things based on value, the value that they'll bring into our lives, not just because there's money in our account. Andrew's here, welcome. Financial discipline. You telling me I can't blow money on a Lambo and Gucci belts? Well, you certainly can if you would like. Oh, Mondra said the same thing. You can if you plan for it. Oh, total joke, but I'm 100% with you. Yeah, financial discipline is so important. I don't think a lot of people talk about it, but yeah, you guys know. But yeah, so kind of just thinking through what things helped me to build that discipline. And one of them was definitely having my emergency funds in my checking account. So of that $12,000 that I had in checking, that was $10,000 of emergency funds plus $2,000 for like the next upcoming month. So yeah, I always hear people say, transfer any savings to a savings account. And I just don't think that that gives you the same benefit as far as like practicing having money and not spending it. The other issue is if you transfer money to savings, it's just as easy to transfer that money back out and spend it. So we really do want to be practicing building the discipline required to have money and not spend it. So that was the first tip that I had, the one account to rule them all. And like I said, once I hit 12,000, I realized, oh, okay, I'm at the point now, discipline-wise, that I could move that money to savings and try to get a better return on it. I mean, most savings account don't have much, but you can move it to a high yield savings account or start investing, that kind of thing. Nothing particularly special about that. That was just when I read the statistic about how most Americans don't have 1,000 in their savings account. And I was like, oh, that's so sad. And I was like, oh, wait 1 second, that's me. It's just that I had more in checking than I had in savings. So it's weird how people manage their money. This was something that I hadn't really thought of until that time came. But having a lot in my checking account really helped me to dissociate the amount of money that I have versus how much money I can spend. And of course, as you guys know, it's really important to actually be able to afford the things that we're buying. So from that perspective, yes, you do need to have those associated. You have to know that you have the money that you're going to spend. But once that is kind of, that's like the step, right? You hit that step, and then the next step is dissociating that top range where you won't like spend money just because you're above a certain point. One tip that I have for that is slowly increasing that threshold for yourself. So if you would say, yes, if I have money, if I have more than 1,000 in my account, I'll spend it. Just start inching that up in increments. Start telling yourself, if I have more than $1,500 in my checking account, I'll spend it. And try really hard to, respect that money. Like, just, it is 1,000 in your mind. Mandaraj says, very true. Andrew says, oh, show. I guess I'm weird because I keep 50 in my checking account, but after that I save or invest everything else. It's weird because I have no urge to move the money after. So when you say move the money, you mean, save and invest after my bills are paid, obviously. Yeah, so this is a good point. If you are already financially disciplined, then yes, that's where I would say go ahead and move that to savings, go ahead and move that to investments. I think really the only benefit of keeping it in your checking account for longer is, like I said, practicing having money and not spending it. But like I said, once you're more disciplined, then yeah, set up auto pays, get it invested, whatever you need to do. So that is the one account to rule them all. Another tip that I have is 2,000 is the new zero. So that's what I said to myself when I was trying to increase those increments of this is how much money I have in my account and this is how much I can spend. So this is like the floor compared to the ceiling. If I have more than 1,000, I'll spend it. So inching that ceiling higher. Oh, if I have more than 1,500, I'll spend it. If I have more than 2,000, I'll spend it. Inching that up, and then inching up the floor as well. So 2,000 is the new zero would mean that when you look at your account, you get used to subtracting $2,000 off of your balance, and that's how much money you actually have to spend. So that's like the bare minimum, like you stop spending at that point, essentially. Now, for a lot of people, that point is zero or zero plus maxed out credit cards. So it takes a little bit of effort to figure out what that number is for you. I've talked on here a little bit before about how $200 was my initial floor, where I said, oh crap, I only have $200. I need to stop spending money. So inching that floor up as well. So if it's $200, say $500 is the new zero. And then anytime you get to 500, you pretend like that is zero and you start taking other actions, getting creative with your finances to come up with other solutions to needing money. Like, oh, okay, I need to actually make more. Okay, I need to sell something. Okay, I need to cut some expense. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions. Madrash, I'm a spender on others, not on myself. Interesting. since I've been bringing my lunch to work, I don't want to spend on lunch, even though I want a treat. I want the money more. That's good. So yeah, identifying the areas that you need to work on, excellent. I think that a lot of us are like that, spending on others. And that kind of brings me into talking about boundaries a little bit too. So the rules that we have for our finances are the boundaries that help us to protect our money, both from ourselves and from others. You know, if people are asking you for money, whether that's friends or family, coworkers, whatever. So I think it's really important to put more why behind all the money that you have, whether that's your emergency funds, whether that's cash on hand, whether that's investments. Having it be more clearly defined as for what that money is for helps you establish the boundaries that will help you to keep that money. So, you know, like in the case, Audrey, you mentioned, you know, spending on others. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, it's a good thing to be generous and to help people out, but just making sure that you have rules around it, rules for yourself. So that way you can both respect your intentions for your money and do the things that you want to do. Now that might look like being slightly less generous on like birthday gifts for a little while until you kind of build up your emergency fund or pay off some debts. And so whatever kind of rules that you can create around the pockets of money that you have is going to be really helpful. So some examples, having more why behind your emergency funds, like saying this money is for job loss. If I lose my job, that's the only purpose for this money. Now that's setting a boundary with yourself as far as, okay, I'm only going to touch this if I have a job loss. So putting rules around our money, creating those boundaries are going to help us to keep the intentions that we set for ourselves, our goals. I wanted to talk about resourcefulness a little bit. So when you get close to that lower boundary that you have, like whatever is the new zero, 2000 is the new zero, that should really be a trigger for us to start getting more creative with our finances. I know that when times are hard, it's really easy to raid your savings and to go to that savings account and say, okay, I'm going to use this money now for this. If you have more defined rules for yourself on what your money is for, then that will trigger the question of, oh, what else can I do to solve this problem? You know, if you have a job loss fund and that's all the money you have and your car breaks down, you know, crummy situation, I do recommend having a car fund or a like common shortage fund. You know, if your car breaks down, kind of drawing that line with yourself and saying, okay, that does not mean that I can raid my job loss fund. That's for job loss. So getting creative would look like, okay, maybe I can sell something from my house. Really, it comes down to trying to do those things that we do at our floor a little earlier. So if you know, ran your account down to zero, what would you do? You would start coming up with other ideas for how you could pay for the item or find a workaround for it. We want to do that a little earlier than we are right now. And the same is true with this, with the ceilings that we have for our money, for their ceiling boundaries. We want to go a little farther once we hit our comfort level. So if you are used to saying, if I have more than 1,000 in my account, I'll spend it. You know, inching that up to 1,500 and say, okay, if I have more than 1,500, I'll spend it. That also, so that kind of, it kind of inherently means that once you hit 1,000, you're still going a little harder until you're at the point of 1,500. So hopefully that makes sense. We want to go a little harder when we're near the top and get a little more creative earlier when we're near the bottom. And that's going to help inch up your finances to the point where you can, you know, hit your savings goal or pay off more debt or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. I'm talking so much today. And then the last thing that I wanted to share on the financial discipline topic was just the not yet idea. A lot of us are really hard on ourselves saying, oh, we just can't have anything. Then we feel really deprived. And when we feel deprived for too long, it can lead to yo-yo spending or binge spending, is what I call it. It's just like yo-yo dieting. If you put yourself in deprivation for too long, then you're more likely to relapse and go on like a binge, go on a eating spree. So it's really important to manage that level of deprivation when we're trying to hit goals. So making sure that we're being kind to ourselves and taking breaks. And then I really love this mindset of not yet. So instead of saying no to yourself all the time, like, no, I can't buy that, no, I can't go there, really try to convince yourself that it's really just not yet. One of my mantras always was, it's temporary. And it really was. Like, it took me a few years to get my emergency funds built up and to get debt to the point where I felt comfortable kind of easing off and getting back to minimum payments. It's all about, when you are comfortable with the level of goals that you're at. So I think that being able to just say to yourself, okay, not yet, I'll just wait on that purchase a little longer. It does tie back in with purchase procrastination, which I've talked about on the channel. I have a video on that. Just making sure that you kind of take a step back when you're shopping. And that gives you the ability to then prioritize the things that you want against each other, instead of it just being, yes, I want this, or no, I don't. And so taking a step back, keeping a list of the things you want to purchase. I've kind of been thinking about this more lately as kind of like consuming slowly. So just, slowing down the speed at which you're buying things is going to help you to save money. And it's going to help you build that discipline of saying, now's not the right time. That gives you the opportunity in the future to say, okay, now is the right time. But making sure we're building that discipline of those boundaries of, oh, okay, now might not be the best time, considering the goals I set for myself. Rochelle's here, welcome. She says, not yet. I know, I can't help it. I love talking about purchase procrastination. So, okay, that's all I had on building financial discipline for now. So let's do a little prep for a September mid-month budget update. So we are about a week out from the end of the month. So that means that this is the perfect time to do a comparison to budget, an actual to budget comparison. I try really hard to make managing money easy. And so I always say, if you're only going to review your spending once per month and compare it to your budget, the week before the end of the month is the absolute best time to do it. So that would be right now. And the reason why is because that gives you a little bit of time to adjust if you are running really hot and spending a lot of money. It gives you a little bit of time to think through, are there any purchases that I can push off till next month? And from a budget perspective, that has two benefits, right? Not only are you saving your September budget, but you have an item identified now that you want to purchase in October. So both months end up being more accurate if you can push off any purchases that you were planning or that you'd like to purchase for a little bit of time. Hopefully that makes sense. So let me go ahead and share. I just put together a little sample budget. Let me see if I can pull it up here. So maybe we said, here's our September budget, income of $3,000 and expenses of $3,000. What we would do for a mid-month update is go in and put in what we have actually earned and actually spent so far in the month. The benefit of doing this is really seeing how much money you have left. And then, like I said, you can use that for decision making, for whether to push off purchases or to go ahead with them. So let's say we received all of our checks for this month. So we would have 3,000. Then we would go through and we would add up all of our food spending for the month so far. Let's say we've spent 325, so we have $75 left. It's really important to have your categories on your actual spending match to the categories on your budget. I think this is one of the big mistakes that people make with budgeting is they'll set a budget with these certain categories, but then their spending, they're not putting them in the same structure, so then they don't match up. You know what I mean? So like maybe they had a transaction and it was called office supplies. Office supplies isn't on here. So then they might, they'd have to decide whether to put that in personal or create a separate category, that kind of thing. So just making sure that they link up is important. Let's say they spent $40 on gifts, which means they were $20 over. Health, let's say that's deducted from their check, so the same every time. They have paid their rent, and so on. One thing that I do like to do is I do a little formula to figure out what percentage of the month is gone. So it's the 22nd, so we're 22 days out of 30. So we're 73% through the month. So one thing I will do is I'll go in and put in the percentage of what I've spent. So if we're 73% of the way through the month, but I've spent 90% of my food budget, then you can see that it's time to slow down a little in that category, see if we can't make it until October before we go to the grocery store. And this is just a really simple spreadsheet. I have made this public before, so it's available. I don't think I linked it below in the description, but very easy to set up in either Excel or Google Docs. Any questions on that? On kind of how to do a mid-month budget comparison, actual versus budget? Let me pull myself back up here, look at the comments. It's easier to wait on purchasing. When you have so many things you haven't used, you can shop in your own closet. Very good. So actually, that's a great point. As you're going through here, let that be a trigger to you for which categories you want to try to cut back in. And then, yes, like if you're over budget in clothing, maybe take a few minutes and go to your closet and just kind of skim through and see if there's anything that you haven't worn in a while that kind of fulfills that need for something new. So that's a great tip. Excuse me. Same thing is true for your food spending. If you're running hot on your food budget, you can go into your freezer or your pantry and see if there's anything that's like getting old or anything that you had missed, cans behind cans or something, that then you can pull through and actually use up. So yes, that's a great point. Go in and see if there's anything that you can use up or pull to the front, essentially. Excellent idea. Thank you. Okay. If there aren't any questions on that, let's go ahead and do a work session. So, like I said, the prompts for this would be a September mid-month budget review. So that might look like categorizing spending. So going into like if you use mint.com, going in there and updating the categories. If you type up your spending in a spreadsheet, getting them typed up. And then adding up your categories and comparing those to what you initially budgeted. And then finally comparing how much you have left total or by category. Okay. Oh, I talk so much. Okay. Let's go ahead and start our work session. And let me know in the comments if you have questions, and we can go ahead and get started. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Reset. Okay. Unmute, unshare, unbanner. Okay, how did it go? Do you have any questions for me? So Rochelle said, I'm here just editing a budget video. Exciting. Yeah, I thought that these sessions would be helpful for side hustles, is what I was hoping. I like to do like there's a lot of YouTubers that do like write with me. So writing channels. I think they call them author tubers. So I've been doing that a little bit for writing and thought that, yeah, it would be good for that kind of thing. Rochelle, love these sessions. Thank you for coming. You're the best. Let's see. Yeah, any other questions? Like I said, September, this is the perfect time to do actual versus budget comparison. Did you guys have any questions on the first part where I talked about financial discipline, ways to have more discipline? I shared the one account to rule them all. So keeping more in your checking account helps you kind of flex that muscle of having money and not spending it. I talked about boundaries with your money. So giving more purpose to each of the dollars that you have, and then so it's really establishing boundaries and then keeping them with yourself. 2,000 is the new zero as far as that floor that you set. Inching up the ceiling of if I have more than 1,000, I'll spend it. Resourcefulness, purchase procrastination. Mandaraj says, halfway done with my banking. I just got in the house before the live session. Okay. Like I said, I think I'm just going to do the one session today. We did one longer one. But yeah. And so I was wondering actually if a lot of people use their banks for tracking, because I had Wells Fargo for a while, and I would go in there and categorize spending, and they had reports, like spending reports. It's more complicated if you have more than one account, but if you have just one account, I think that doing it in the banking app is usually a pretty good option for people. And I think that they have a budget feature too. So you can straight up put the budget in there, just update any categories, and then you can see actual versus budget and how much you have left. Cool. Good job. All right. So what was the most helpful takeaway? Was there anything in particular from this live stream that was helpful? I did put a link in the description to an interview I did with Doug Cunnington. Doug has been on our live streams. And so I did an interview with him, and it turned out really good. I'm really happy with it. So I put a link to that in the description. So if you haven't checked that out, he just posted it yesterday. So you guys should go and watch the interview. Okay, Mandaraj says, I started doing the envelope system in my checking account because of COVID. Cool. Yeah, I think that I'm excited to see what banks and apps do with how to separate and categorize your money inside of the apps. I know some of them now have like virtual savings accounts where it's technically the same account, like the number is one number, but it allows you to chunk out those amounts into different things. I just think that's such a good tool for organizing your money. So yeah, I think that more places are going to be doing that. So that's a cool thing to do as well. Okay, that's all I have for you guys. Thanks so much for hopping on. I will go ahead and let you go. So I'm hoping to do a weekly planning live stream on Sunday. I got some good feedback from you guys on liking that session. I will do Money with Me's on Tuesdays and try to do videos every Friday, pre-recorded. So thank you guys so much for hopping on. And I will talk to you all later. Bye.